So lots of you have shown an interest in the CDD method, and I want to thank all of you for following my page, liking and sharing my posts, joining my groups. It really does mean so much to me to see so many of you that are interested in a more holistic approach. And I'm just going to go into more detail about what the CDD method involves and what it means. And it stands for Canine Dialogue Dynamics, which is based on holistic teaching and natural learning. And this is heavily based in communication, more of a natural communication that involves teaching rather than just training. Now, it can be used alongside force-free and ethical training, but it can just be used standalone by itself, which a mixture of my clients do a bit of both. Lots of my clients prefer it to training, and lots of my clients prefer it alongside training. So it's what works best for you, but also what works best for your dog. And it uses communication rather than just cued words. So words that have been conditioned and cued, or just simplistic one-syllable words, or even just very simple phrases. It goes deeper than that. And I'm not against conditioning. Conditioning is a natural part of learning. We all have learnt conditioned responses, and conditioning is a natural part of learning and teaching. But I feel that we've gone too far into conditioning, and we're actually over-conditioning our dogs to quite a severe degree. And this has a negative effect on dogs. It has a negative effect on owners and dogs, and quite often we're just not aware that there are other ways around it. And the reason I looked into different approaches, more holistic approaches, is because I felt that conditioning, when we over-condition, it limits the dog's capability of learning and thinking for themselves. Because when we have a conditioned response, particularly a very strong conditioned response, it can override our ability to think. And this is the same for dogs. If you think of a time where you've just been conditioned to do something and you're being mindless about it, it's not always what you actually want to do when you're thinking about it. When you're actually being mindful about it, you can override that conditioned response. But if you've just been taught through a series of conditioned responses, this can really negatively affect how you can function and how you can think through your choices. So it can actually take away your dog's choices, because if your dog only has choices that they've been conditioned to make, this is very different from making a very natural decision that is based on them thinking things through. So one example of this for me would be if I've got a conditioned response to eat food that is just nearby. And if I'm just left to my own devices and I'm not thinking and I'm not applying my intellectual part of the mind, I'm just going to mindlessly and conditionally eat those biscuits. My brain is conditioned to reach out and eat those biscuits. But my intellectual part of my brain actually doesn't want to do that, because I don't want to eat unhealthily, I don't want to overindulge all the time, but I need to be able to apply mindfulness and impulse control and self-restraint to those decisions. I need to be able to function in a way that employs all of those elements. But quite often, teaching in a holistic way is overlooked, and if we just go through a series of training cued and conditioned responses, all that's going to happen is the dog is going to become quite robotic, and they're going to just act like this. And that's not a very natural way for a dog to think or operate. And there are circumstances where we do need that kind of response from our dogs, and that's absolutely fine. But I want to see it where it's only applied when it's absolutely necessary. And for the most part, we're actually applying holistic teaching with natural learning, where it's organically built through the relationship with you and your dog. And the way that we use language is really important. We use language in a way where dogs can understand it. We teach using language, so we teach through word association, and we build that into a way of how we teach. And we know that dogs do understand language much more than we previously thought. There have been studies that show this, very small studies, but they're very powerful. And it really does show how dogs can understand so much more than just simple words, simple conditioned responses, simple sentences. They understand a lot more. They understand the meaning behind what we're saying once it's been taught to them. And I'll link the study so you can have a look at that. It's fascinating. But it means that instead of relying on cued responses and very simple words like come, down, stay, or even phrases like this way, come here, you see, there's not a lot of context to what I'm saying. And so it's employing different ways of speaking to our dogs through education in a way that they can learn and understand in a natural way. So instead of using those cued words, I might say to my dog, come on, and we're going to go to the next field. Shall we go over there? Oh, can you wait for me by the gate? I'm just coming to see you. So once they've learnt it, they can employ this very, very quickly. They can demonstrate this to us in a very natural way. So we teach them with more context, and we teach them in a lot of different contexts as well. So we're not just teaching them to do a specific thing in different contexts. We're teaching them how to be flexible with their learning, with their thinking, with what they're doing, to be able to be flexible to the environment around them and as that changes. So for example, we want a dog to be able to know the difference between, okay, can you wait for me by the gate? I need to check if that next field is clear, to, okay, you can go through now. They need to understand the difference between my tone of voice as well, and it's always going to be positive. It's not going to be a negative tone of voice. That's really important, that this is gentle and it's a really nice way to speak to our dogs. But they need to understand all the different things about my body language, about what I'm saying, about how I'm saying it, to be able to understand the full context. If you think about a conversation that you have with someone, if they just spoke to you in the same way that we train dogs, you just wouldn't get the same context. It's going to be different because my body language is going to be more restrained when I'm training, when I'm just using very simple directive language. Because if I'm just going, do this, come here, do that, sit down, do this, that doesn't give away a lot of context. But if I say, oh, can you just come away a second because of this? Or, hey, come back to me because we've got to do this. Or wait over there because this is coming. Or what are you doing? Are you doing something fun? You know, engaging with our dogs as well. It's not just about giving them directions and guidance all the time. It's about being a part of their world as well. It's about being a part of their perspective. So we engage with what they're engaging with in a nice way. It doesn't need to achieve anything. It's just because it's a nice thing to do and it strengthens the bond with our dogs. And holistic teaching just means that we're incorporating everything to do with the entire dog and all the things to do with teaching holistically. So it's teaching all aspects, not just training. So that's what I mean by holistic teaching. We're incorporating their emotions, their autonomy, their cognitive abilities, self-regulation, emotional regulation. And we teach dogs how to work from their prefrontal cortex in the intellectual mind rather than just the emotional and instinctive mind. And this is where training can go wrong sometimes, because if we just rely on training, then what we're doing is we're working with the dog's emotional mind and we're working with the instinctual mind, but we're not giving them the opportunity to really think using their intellectual mind. Because whilst we're relying on conditioning and just creating cues and responses, they don't have to think very much. They learn how to act. So you say, they do. And you repeat that again and again and again until you get the response that you're looking for. But that doesn't actually encourage dogs to think things through, to think about what they're doing, why they're doing it, the environment around them, to incorporate all of the things, everything. That's what I mean holistically, is just incorporating absolutely everything. And natural learning means that we're teaching them how to make their own choices. So we're teaching them naturally. They're learning in more of a natural environment where they can think things through, where they're in an environment that supports their learning. We encourage them to make their own choices, but we do have to teach them how to make those choices first. We need to teach them the concept of making a choice. It's much deeper than, do you want this toy or that toy? Do you want to go this way or this way? It's much more about incorporating all these different choices and how to make thoughtful choices. We're not just going to give them free rein and go, right, off you go, you choose whatever you want, whenever you want. That doesn't actually create a healthy mind, and it doesn't create healthy learning, and that would just create chaos. In the same way with children, we do need to teach boundaries, but how we teach the boundaries is important. That makes a big difference. We don't need to be instructive. We don't need to dictate to our dogs all the time like we don't with our children. So we can teach them in a way where it benefits them, but it benefits their mind, and it works for them in a way that they can actually understand the context of why we're doing things. So natural learning is really basing it on, without treats, without distracting them all the time and getting them hyper-focused on gaining a reward. It's about teaching them about their environment, about their feelings, about their emotions, about self-restraint and real impulse control. Because impulse control goes much deeper than how long you can get your dog to sit and leave their food for a while, or stay and leave the room. Although that's very impressive and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's more of like a trick. It's something that you can teach your dog, but when it's in context to something else, it doesn't actually work, and it tends to fall apart the majority of the time, depending on how conditioned that dog's been. But it's more about teaching a dog how to actually regulate their emotions, how to bring their arousal levels down, how to manage themselves, and how to employ self-restraint. So it's about moving away from instructional training even if it's done in a force-free way, even if it's done just using treats and you're very hands-off and you've been very nice in the way you're saying things, that can still be used in a very forceful manner, even if it's very unintentional, which quite often it is. Because if we're teaching a dog to override their emotions, to override their wants and their needs in order to do something for us to gain a reward that they've been conditioned to want, that can lead them into trouble. That can conflict with their mind and actually create quite a chaotic mindset. It's about building a relationship where you truly understand one another. You understand your dog's individual body language. You understand what they're saying to you. You understand what they're asking for. You understand what they mean and what they need. And you allow them the choices so that you're giving them a voice. They feel heard and listened to. And that's empowering to a dog. It's empowering to us. So we give them a choice and we teach them those choices, or not just one choice, but many different choices where we can and where it's sensible to do that. It's more than just building a relationship built upon transactions. It's not just about you do X and receive Y. You know, it's much more than that. We want to be able to build it on relationship. I don't want my relationship with my dog built upon what they can get from me and what I give to them, and that being it. It needs to be much, much deeper than that. No, there's nothing wrong with giving your dog a treat. Absolutely, that's a nice thing to do for your dog. But it's where we always want them to do something for us, and then we reward them for doing that. It's something that doesn't employ a healthy mindset when it's only the way we teach. Because teaching can employ that, but it has to be built upon all these other areas as well. So a relationship built on trust, real communication, understanding, having choices, feeling heard and understood, as well as unconditional love. Training is just one element of teaching, but teaching holistically means all the elements involved in teaching. And that's to show the entire picture and not just this one picture of a snippet of what we're wanting our dogs to do for us. And it works well with all dogs at all different ages. Now, I actually started using the CDD method and developing this when I was trying to work with reactive dogs. And for those of you who know my background, you'll know that I started my training journey back in 2010. I built on that and really started my business in 2018. And by 2020, I was starting to feel frustrated that although I was always a force-free trainer and I was a qualified behaviourist, I couldn't actually help all the dogs that I wanted to help, including my own dog. I found that constantly conditioning and training my dog around his triggers just wasn't helping him. We'd end up getting so far and just either never breaking through, and then one negative thing would happen, a dog would come too close, something out of my control would happen where a dog ran right up to him, and we'd be right back where we started, if not worse. So it was always a constant 2 steps forwards, 10 steps back. And I just thought there has to be more than this. We did that for years. Lots of my clients were struggling with this method, and I didn't want them to go to a method that involved balance training or going into forceful training methods. So I had to find a different approach, and that's where I did a lot of research. I found a lot of different people who were doing lots of different things to do with holistic teaching and training and using language and seeing dogs from a different perspective. So there was a whole group of people that I learned from. And I developed the CDD method from the research I'd done, from the people I'd learned from, the other professionals, and my own ethos. And that's really where it came from. It stemmed from that. And I couldn't believe how much of a difference that made to my own dog, let alone my clients' dogs as well. No, don't get me wrong. Some of my clients worked perfectly fine with the treat method, with using engage and disengage and training games and all that kind of stuff around their triggers. But a lot of dogs didn't. And I really needed to find something that bridged that gap, that was still ethical, that was still force-free, that just helped those people that had dogs that didn't suit training. And years of conventional force-free training just didn't fit with me. It did for a time, and then I started to see that there were flaws, and those flaws were often unaddressed. And I just felt that there was a big gap missing, and I needed to find that missing link. And it wasn't just me that found that missing link. There was collectively a load of people that found that missing link. And I do encourage you, if CDD isn't for you, look for other holistic methods, because I do promise you that it will benefit you and your dog in such a huge way, where I really am quite passionate about just encouraging people to just step back from conventional training, just step back from what we've always done, and just look at it in a different perspective. And it's a fantastic and exciting journey, one that I'm so happy I went on, and I want others to do the same. Once I was starting to help reactive dogs, I then started to use this with new puppy owners. And that was really, really interesting, because people who were using this method, instead of just relying on training, were bringing up and raising puppies that could think for themselves, that had a much easier time going through adolescence, who could self-regulate much easier. who could learn recall in a much better way, who could actually employ these different techniques and showcase that they were self-aware and that they could actually grow into the dogs and the personality that they were born with, but shaped in a way that nurtures their personality and doesn't try to change it. My clients were phoning me up saying this is so much easier than when I first had my puppy, and all of them have raised dogs now that don't have any behaviour issues. They function properly, they have properly functioning minds. And I use this with adult dogs and adolescent dogs. So you can use this, and it doesn't matter where you're at with your dog, whether you want to continue training your dog, whether you've got a dog that struggles with reactivity or separation anxiety, whether you've got a puppy that you want to raise more holistically and naturally to try to avoid any kind of behavioural issues kicking in and trying to build resilience and self-assurance and confidence within that puppy, or whether you're going through adolescence, always a really fun time for dog parents, whether you're going through any of that, or whether you've got an elderly dog and you just want to do something more enriching, whether you've got a rescue dog and you want to help them overcome any bad history that they've got, any trauma they've gone through, this method will certainly help you. And you can see where you can get with it. I just want you to just try it. So whether or not you join any of my groups, I've got a group for reactivity. I've got a group for the CDD method for more general issues. I've written a book just this year called Barking Up a New Tree, Rethinking Dog Training. That's available on Amazon, or if you want to get a copy direct from me, please do message me. I have courses. I have courses for reactivity. I have courses for puppies and adolescents and adult dogs, and soon to have courses for other professionals who want to get involved too. I really do want to help other professionals. So if you are a professional, please do get in touch and see how I can help you, because I just want to really share this method, share this way of living with our dogs. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that's cleared up a few things. Please do message me if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer those for you.